Hello and welcome to the News by Standards. The government is facing a growing backlash from Conservative MPs as it tries to establish a plan for where thousands of migrants arriving by small boats should be housed. Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has pledged to significantly reduce the number of people who are being housed in hotels following their arrival in the UK, which is reportedly costing £6 million per day. The government plans to house migrants and asylum seekers in other locations such as surplus military sites, disused holiday parks and barges moored off the coast. Setting out the plan, Mr Jenrick said ministers understand the concerns of local communities and are working closely to listen to their views and reduce the impact of these sites. Many Conservative MPs have previously spoken out against such processing sites being established in their areas. Richard Drax, the MP for South Dorset, has said he is preparing to mount a legal challenge over the Home Secretary's failure to consult local officials regarding asylum seekers being housed on a barge in his constituency. Ms Braverman is set to announce that the Bibby Stockholm barge in Dorset will be used as the Home Office's first offshore accommodation for asylum seekers in the coming days. Mr Drax told that Ms Braverman rang him up out of the blue last week to inform him of the plans and that she was unsympathetic about concerns over an influx of migrants on the seaside town. The message that was delivered was, "It's coming, we don't have a choice," he said. "As far as I gather, the talks with the private port company have been ongoing for a while, but there's been no consultation with anybody at all. It's literally been behind closed doors." He said he was very concerned about a whole range of issues raised by the barge plans, including potential welfare concerns over migrants' conditions on board and a lack of local infrastructure to accommodate them. James Cleverly. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, who represents the Braintree constituency in Essex, has publicly spoken out against a new immigration detention centre being set up in his constituency. MDP Wethersfield, a former RAF base in the area, has been shortlisted as a potential accommodation site and could house up to 1,500 male asylum seekers. Writing on Facebook, he had spoken to the Home Office to highlight the remote nature of the site, the limited transport infrastructure and narrow road network, and that these factors would mean that the site wasn't appropriate for asylum accommodation. The Conservative-run Braintree District Council has also issued a statement saying it was seeking clarification from the Home Office about its plans. Priti Patel. Former Home Secretary Priti Patel has also spoken out against plans to set up an asylum centre in Braintree, the constituency which neighbours her seat of Witham. She has reportedly written to the Home Office to raise concerns over the lack of information provided to the council on the scale of the site, how the asylum seekers will be managed, the length of time it will be used, and the impact assessment. Speaking in the Commons earlier this month, she pressed Mr Jenrick on the plans, comparing it to a similar site in Linton-on-Oise, North Yorkshire, which was cancelled by the government following a backlash. She said, "Can I ask why it is deemed appropriate for asylum seekers' accommodation to be placed in a rural village in Essex with single men when there is no infrastructure, no amenities, but it was not appropriate for someone like Linton-on-Oise?" Hugh Merriman, MP for Bexhill and Rail Minister, has spoken out against plans announced by Mr Jenrick for asylum seekers to be accommodated at the site of a former training centre known as North Eye in his constituency. In a statement on his website, he said the proposed site would have an impact on local authorities and public services and be of great concern to local residents. He said he had held meetings with Home Office officials, adding, "I am keen to identify the challenges and issues this will create for the town and its residents. I will work with the Home Office and other organisations to deliver the resources and safeguards which will be needed to reassure residents." Sir Edward Lee. One of the sites proposed by the government to house asylum seekers is RAF Scrampton, Lincolnshire, which was once home to the Red Arrows and the Dam Busters. Sir Edward Lee, the MP for Gainsborough, has criticised the government for failing to notify him of the plans for a site in his constituency. "I'm very annoyed I've had no official notification," the former minister told the BBC. He claimed his principal concern was that the new asylum centre, which is expected to be temporary, would not jeopardise government plans to rejuvenate the site at a cost of £300 million. "All I care about is ensuring for the first time ever is that we get a really good deal for an RAF base and that it doesn't go to rack and ruin. Anything the government does to put migrants there temporarily must not stop the wonderful deal for North Lincolnshire." Kevin Hollinrake. Several MPs have also previously spoken out against planned asylum centres prior to the most recent announcement by the government. In 2022, Kevin Hollinrake, the MP for Thirsk, warned that plans for an asylum centre in Linton-on-Oise in his constituency would devastate the local community. There have been plans for around 1,500 male asylum seekers to be housed at the former RAF base at Linton-on-Oise. Speaking in the Commons in May last year, Mr Hollinrake said the local area was a village without streetlights, without police presence. It will devastate the community. It will devastate house prices, which will plummet, and the residents of that village will not feel safe to leave their homes alone, he added. Plans for an asylum centre at the former RAF base were ultimately scrapped by the government in August 2022. Theo Clark, MP for Stafford, has claimed she has been inundated by complaints from residents over plans for an asylum accommodation site in her constituency which could house up to 500 people. Speaking in the Commons in February, she said she welcomes the government's crackdown on illegal immigration, but urged the Prime Minister to reconsider plans for the site in Stafford. She said, "Will my right honourable friend consider the government's proposal to relocate approximately 500 single male asylum seekers to Beaconside in Stafford? Will he meet me urgently to discuss it, given the huge number of objections that I have received from constituents on the issue?" Concerns over the site have been raised for almost a year, with Ms Clark calling on the government to reconsider the plans in July 2022. Andy Carter. Warrington South MP Andy Carter raised concerns in November 2022 that an asylum centre had been established at a hotel in a constituency without any consultation of local residents, which he branded simply not acceptable. Speaking during a debate on the migrant crisis, he said he had been notified earlier that month that the Firegrove Hotel in his Warrington South constituency would become an asylum centre the following day, and that no talks were held with the council. "It's in the middle of a residential area, less than 200 yards from a primary school," he said in the Commons. "I'm sure Mr Jenrick would agree with me that it's simply not acceptable for the Home Office to steamroll ahead on a decision like this without the necessary consultation with local residents." Paul Maynard. Former Minister Paul Maynard, who is MP for Blackpool North and Cleves, also raised concerns in November 2022 that asylum seekers were being housed in his constituency. He claimed that around 400 asylum seekers were housed in the Metropole Hotel on the Promenade and called for them to be moved to other areas. "I appreciate that Blackpool is one of those areas that has borne a disproportionate burden from this issue for a long time," he told the Commons. "So if there's a way we can ensure that individuals are dispersed from Blackpool more swiftly than other parts of the country, then I'd be happy to look into that."